Hello YouTube, welcome to Fret by Fret Instructions, and today I'll be teaching you the open major triads. Now, a chord is any collection of 3 or more notes, and on the guitar there's 3 basic kinds. Well, that's not exactly true. There are a lot of different chords, 5, 5/7s, dominants, but for beginners there's really 3 that you should know, that you kind of have to learn, and those are the open chords, the bar chords. It's called bar chord because you have your finger barring all the strings, or the power chord. And the power chord is just a simplified bar chord. Today I'm just going to be teaching you the open major triads, which are A, C, D, E, and G major. And I'll make sure to post a video later with the minor triads. The reason I'm splitting up is because that's 5 chords in the major triads, and that's a lot to absorb if you're just starting guitar. You want to make sure that you can play them clearly. You want to make sure you can transition between them fast, and sometimes learning 10 is just a little bit too much. So let's jump right into it. As I play along with the chord, I'll make sure to have some little chord chart maybe right here, just to show you guys how you're supposed to play it. Each number is going to represent the finger that you use, with the index finger being 1 all the way to the pinky finger being 4th. The first of the major open triads that I'll show you is the A chord, which can be played 2 ways. One is simpler, but one is more efficient. The simpler way is when you use 3 fingers and you put 1 finger on the 2nd fret on the D string, the G string, and the B string. But that's not very efficient. The best way to do it would be to use 1 finger and bar it over the 3 strings. That way you have freedom for these fingers, and also it helps to transition to other chords faster. It's going to sound the same either way, but when you're starting out, it's probably going to be simpler to do it the easier way. Whatever you do is fine, just as long as you get to this eventually, and that's going to sound like this. The next chord is the C major. The way you play that is you take your index finger and you put that on the 1st fret of the B string. You take your middle finger and you put that on the 2nd fret of the D string. One thing that you should watch out for is that the G string here, it stays open. There's no fingering on it. So be careful, make sure that you're not covering that up with your middle finger. And the last note is you take your ring finger and you put it on the 3rd fret of the A string. And that's going to sound like this. The next chord is the D, which slightly resembles a triangle. It's a good way to help you remember it. And the way that you start out is with the middle finger on the 2nd fret of the E string. Then you want to get your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the B string. And lastly, you want to get your index finger on the 2nd fret of the G string. This is what that's going to sound like. This one might take a little bit of fiddling around with your fingers to get it to sound right, because beginners tend to have 1 finger covering a string. It'll come out muffled, or it'll come out as a different chord, but if you practice it enough and make sure that it sounds right each time, then you'll get it and it'll be easy. The next chord is the E chord, and the way that you play that is you have your index finger on the 1st fret of the G string. You have your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. Notice how there's this open note right here. It's important to make sure that you don't, mess that up, but that's going to get filled in a second anyway. Because lastly, you're going to have your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string. Some people, when they just see the chord chart, they'll think it's played like this, which is a way that you can play. It's the same note either way, but it's not as efficient, it's not as comfortable for your fingers, so that's why you should really try to do it like this formation. That's going to sound like this. Alright, the last chord is the G chord, and this is kind of a stretch. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the E string. You're going to want to have your index finger on the 2nd fret of the A string. There's a lot of space in between those two, so try to get that. And lastly, your middle finger is going to be on the 3rd fret of the E string. And that's going to sound like this. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time with Minor Triads.